G'day all, welcome to Good Cuppa of LLJ. Just setting up here, we'll get this show on the road, sorry. Um, we'll send a link for Ken so we can talk to Dazzler Dunlop. Um, just setting everything up. Uh, Getting used to SteamYard. Just trying to find settings. Yeah, bear with us. Um, Before I do that, just sent Ken the link. Was looking at my PMs and got a message. He's waiting for the link. Dazzler Dunlop. Um, yeah, we should get the ball rolling soon. Apologise for my lack of organisation. I didn't sleep very well. Um, all right. Um, yeah, we've got Ken here, so I'll just set up before I invite him in. I'll just set up the SteamYard so I can put it on Lazar's Pro Wrestling fan group. Um, G'day, Ken. How's it going?
Good, mate, yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Was just trying to figure it out. Pretty new to StreamYard.
Oh,
StreamYard,
okay.
how you?
Yeah, I'm not
So
very
how
good with
are you?
these computerized things.
Yeah, yeah, they can be tricky. Like I should know, but then I sort of forget stuff, remember stuff. So I'm
You have to write,
36, so I was sort of brought up on technology, but then there was a period where I didn't use it for a while.
right.
Yeah, but yeah, so I'm pretty new to StreamYard. It seems to be fashionable at the moment, so just figuring out like all the little bits and pieces with it. So how are you going anyway?
Yeah, good, thanks. Do you have a
Yep.
nice Christmas?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Caught up with a mate. Went to a Christmas feast at night time. Caught up with a few people. He drank the last of the creaming soda, so I was a bit peeved, so I didn't get any.
Right.
Yeah, but it wasn't too bad. How was your Christmas?
Yeah, pretty good. We had a big full-on lunch, and I didn't get home until like 5:30, so I had too much to eat, so I couldn't have dinner, so I had to go to bed early. I was knackered.
Nice. Yeah, I had like they had like just your basics like chicken, salad and stuff when I went to the Christmas feast. And yeah, just chilled and laughed and think I got home like oh probably I think it was like 11 o'clock at night or something or 12 at night.
Right.
So I feel ya. Um yeah, I'm trying to think like with good couple of LLJ, I sort of done a bit of research and was thinking of like stuff to ask, but then I'm thinking it's sort of like see where the conversation goes. So I'm a bit more like casual. But
Yep, sure.
I've been reading your book and there's a lot of really interesting stuff in it that I've been really enjoying. Um, I read like um, I think past you when you started promoting, and I'm just past
Right.
that bit.
Oh, okay,
But
right.
yeah, it's like really fascinating. Yeah, trying to think where I'll like start us, or if you want to have anything like just see where the conversation leads. So I'm trying to think. Yeah, but throughout the
Well,
book, it was pretty.
I've tried to sort of put it out there as honestly as I could how the wrestling business is or how it was. And I think it come across that way,
Yeah,
hopefully. I
yeah, I was
mean,
fascinated. Yep.
it's a great business and you have to love it. You have to have passion because I don't think anyone in Australia can make a living out of wrestling. They can't make a lot of money out of wrestling. So it's something you've really got to have a passion for and a deep love and respect. Otherwise, there's no point in getting into it, really.
Yeah, I noticed through reading your book, because you're like brought up in a more golden age where nowadays it's sort of improving with like technology and more avenues to advertise. But I was like throughout reading your book, I was really impressed with like how much there was with professional wrestling in Australia. Like there was a lot of great talent from overseas and a lot of great marketing and stuff.
Oh, it
Like
was
Andre,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah. The World Championship Wrestling ran from 64 to 78, and Jim Barnett ran until I think 75, and he'd turn over the talent every 2 or 3 months. He was a smart man, and he would market things for the Australian market. He knew there was a huge Italian population, so Milano was pushed and pushed and pushed and became a megastar. Agreeing with the Greek population, he chose everyone really carefully. He was a very, very smart man, smart operator. And then in 75, Larry O'Day and Ron Miller took over and they sort of pushed more of the Australian talent. But I think they sort of got some of the guys like Ox Baker, Butcher Brannigan, and they were past their prime at that stage, and that could have been the writing on the wall. Who knows?
Yeah, because I read up to like when World Championship Wrestling lost television, um, and then it had like Andre the Giant, and there was some really good tours. And I'm thinking, far out, like that's gold. A lot of people who follow the local scene, like we've had international talent come back, but you wouldn't realise like how many great stars have passed through. And you had like world class wrestling, and I was like reading about that, and I'm thinking, wow, because there was like a lot of great talent passing through there. Um,
That could have gone on. That could have been more successful. The guy who ran it all had the money, had the backing. He just had no idea, unfortunately, about wrestling. And I think I mentioned in the book at one stage they had a whole stack of sheets of guys they can get, like package deals from guys, 10 people from the States. Like there was, I think always in all the packages, there was two women, two midgets, and six guys. And some of the names and some of the things we saw in the office there, I thought, oh, fantastic. And they can get, say, that package, say, I'm not sure the price, just say like $5,000 a week for the 10. Plus you have to fly them all out and obviously accommodation and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, they could have chosen some of the top workers around the world and they just went a different direction. I mean, it started off really well and then they just sort of slightly veered off key. And again, listening to advice from some of the older guys, and I think it was the wrong path to go down. And so I sort of learned a lot from promoting from that because listening to what they were doing and everyone was trying to add their 2 cents worth in, and unfortunately the guy who was running it all just had no idea about the wrestling business, so he let other people guide him, and that's where I think it sort of unravelled.
yeah, because it's quite fascinating. Because throughout like my knowledge of local Aussie wrestling, just from like growing up as a fan, learning about it like '99, I found out about like through the internet dial up era. Um, Sort of like found a few websites skimming. Um, and over time, I've like looked into things. Like, there's probably a lot I don't know, but it's really sad because I think Australian wrestling's starting to do a lot better. But we seem to have had a history like World Wrestling All Stars, for example, where you're like, oh, there's a big company in Australia, but then they end up killing their own market because they start off good with the marketing, but then they don't know that they don't have a foundation to keep it going with, and they end up like killing their own market, and people lose interest, and then they lose money on it and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard. You got to sort of know what the people want, and you've got to give them what they want. And wrestling has changed again from my time to now. Again, people used to love in my time like a 20 to 30 minute match, holds, counter holds, and when you had really good wrestling, the fans in those days used to applaud it. They used to love it. Where if you did that now, they'd be bored because most matches today are between what 5 and 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most. Um, yeah, I think in my career I hardly did any 10 minute matches, or maybe my first 5 or 6 matches might have been 10 to 12 minutes, but everything after that was like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and I even did a few 1 hour matches, and you've got to learn again the psychology of wrestling. That's the hardest part, and it's really hard to teach it. You've got to have a natural thing for ring psychology to work the crowd and to keep the heat for a length of time.
Yeah. Josh Master said, "Morning, Dazzler,"
G'day, Josh. How are you?
and he's got another one that I'll put up now. Any fond memories of wrestling at Brisbane Festival Hall?
The funny thing at Brisbane Festival Hall, the first night I wrestled there, I got lost in the dressing rooms. it was such a maze backstage, and when they had about, I think, eight dressing rooms, and I thought I'd go and do some warm ups and stretching, and so I went away from everybody else to do that, and I couldn't find my way back. They were yelling out, "Where are you? Where are you?" And I was sort of walking around thinking, "Where the hell am I?" So I nearly missed my intro. It was quite funny, but no, it was a great venue. I loved it.
Yeah, I remember there was a gig on back in '99. I think was it '99? Might have been 2000. Mark Lewin had a short-lived company called High Risk Championship Wrestling, and I remember there was an advertisement for Brisbane Festival Hall. But I think they had like a few shows on Channel 9, but fizzled out pretty quick. Don't know if you're
Yeah, it was
familiar with it or not.
it was very poorly organised. I remember I was actually talking about that only recently. I was up in Brisbane a few months ago, and I had coffee with Bruce Davis, who wrestled as Bruiser Davis, and Tony Hawkins, who also wrestled in the 70s and 80s. And Bruce was telling me that him and Kevin Martin were approached to do those shows with Mark Lewin, and he said it was just so badly organised. And apparently, the Australian wrestlers weren't allowed to talk to the American wrestlers. They were kept separate. They even had like security, so you couldn't go in and chat to them. And Bruce was wrestling this guy, and he couldn't go and talk to him beforehand. He said it was just really, really pathetically run, and that's why it collapsed so quickly.
Yeah, that's pretty stupid because you'd think with a locker room and all that, it wouldn't matter what like culture you work. It's all about being professional, and you'd think they would encourage like locker room etiquette, but yeah, it sounded like there was a little bit of politics or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's crazy because Mark Lewin was here, like obviously in the 70s, and that's when he was at his peak, and he was one of the main baby faces in Australia for decades. And then he, of course, became the Purple Haze in America. But he also booked shows here. He was also a booker in New Zealand and had a great run. So you think he's sort of, with his knowledge and experience, um, would have known better.
Yeah, I would think so too. I've like I was a subscriber of the Savoldi Wrestling Library, Mario Savoldi. It's like a website. It's pretty cheap, $3, but like old school promoter in America. And they actually had some footage of like when Mark Lewin was linked with Kevin Sullivan and um their angle they had. I'm trying to think of this stable, not Dungeon of Doom, similar sort of thing where it was like good versus evil. It was fairly interesting, but yeah, being that Mark Lewin had background in Australia, I agree. Like, doesn't make sense, does it? Like, you'd think
No,
you'd
no.
have a heart for Australia and want to help the market.
Yeah, well,
But
you'd have an idea. You should have had a good idea of how Australia worked,
yeah, definitely.
because
Just
a
on
lot of
a quick,
Americans said they had to work harder in Australia than they did in the States because the Australian audience demanded more of them. Where in America they can get by with all their, the bullshit, like the all you got to do is say USA, USA, and they 5 minute chant. Where he said when they came to Australia, they always had to work that bit harder to get the fans, involved, and some of them couldn't do it. I mean, I remember there was a guy called Kerry Brown. I think he worked as Carl Brown from Canada. He worked out here in one of the early shows with Larry O'Day and Ron Miller, bought out. And I remember Ron Miller talking to him. They were working with each other, and Ron said, "I'll do 25." And he's like, "What do you, 20, 25, 25?" And Ron said, "Yeah, 25 minutes." I've never done that before. and he'd been wrestling for about 10 years. He's never gone that, and he wasn't sure if he could do it that long. And I thought, wow, God, someone in the business that long who's never done a match, like that. So it's just, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it's intriguing with like the levels of professionalism. I think Australia at one stage had a really good like setup for how like the fundamentals were, and I think Australian wrestling's a weird scene because we've had like a lot of really good basic fundamentals where we had like a lot of great talent come out of Australia because of the quality of like training, old school training. But I think there's been issues where Australia's had issues with like I don't know how to explain it, lack of foundation. So there's sort of like a lack of flow at times with the marketing. But like if you notice a lot of the Australian talent that have come out of the country and you compare it to a lot of the bigger countries, it seems to be a case of there's a lot of people who wrestle overseas that you'd think would be more professional, but they haven't had real quality training.
Yeah, I think again with training, like you've got to go, you have to learn your basics before you can learn all your high spots and all your fancy stuff. And I'm not sure. Again, I don't know what the training is like these days, but to me, there's no hold, counter hold. There's none of that anymore. And I think you've got to basically start off, with that. Like the first 6 months, I was training as a 7 or 16-year-old when I first started training. It was just break fall, break fall, break fall, like just break falls for over an hour, bridging for half hour, then holds and counter holds. We didn't learn any high spots until probably 5 or 6 months down the road, and it was pretty hard work. And it was like the Tuesday night training, we just again the very basics. Thursday night training was just called bump night, and these guys would just throw us around like rag dolls for 2 hours. So you have to learn all those basics. And then when I moved to Sydney when I was 19 or 20, I met with obviously the legendary Roy Heffernan, who was just a godfather to Australian wrestling. And every hold had 8 different ways out, like a hammerlock, a full Nelson, half Nelson, Japanese wrist lock, figure four, all these things, short arm bar. There was 8 different ways out of every hold, and Roy taught us every single one of them. And I taught all the guys that I trained all of them as well. I mean, I've forgotten probably half of them now as well. But I mean, I think the guys today might learn two or three or one even. I don't know. That's about it. Just there seems to be different skills today. Like, I mean, I love the high flying. It's absolutely sensational. Some of the high flying stuff today, which things we would never do in my time. But I miss the wrestling side of it.
Yeah, I think what annoys me of the high flying today is they've got really good like high flying acrobatics, but I always whinge about like I tell a lot of people when I'm advocating pro wrestling, trying to like promote my interests. Um, I prefer old school pro wrestling a bit more because like with the current product, they don't have the psychology. And I reference like Mexico, like old school Mexico, Lucha Libre. If they're going to do like high flying, at least they had psychology with it, depending,
Yeah.
but usually they had psychology. That's what I reckon they should be doing more with like mainstream, like American wrestling. But unfortunately, they're just doing all these high spots. But then it's annoying because you get bored of seeing the same high spot, and you want to see them like get a reaction from the crowd. Like I think they need to look at going back to basics where Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan could work the crowd, and that kept
Yeah.
people interested because they knew how to work the crowd. Where the high spots, they're killing the moves by doing all the same high spots now, and it's just getting to be cliche, and they don't work the crowd.
Trouble is with some of the high spots today, you can actually see them getting into position, getting ready for the next spot.
Mm.
And the worst thing is there's no selling. They do all these, I mean, again, spectacular, crazy bumps, there's no selling. There's no storyline. So to me, it means jack shit, really. Like if you do a triple somersault land on someone, sell it. Like someone like 85, 90 kilos has just landed on you from the top rope doing a somersault. They just nip up and do something else high spot straight away after it. There's just no selling. There's no storyline, and
And
it's
then the
again, it's a
moves,
look great. It just doesn't mean nothing. If you don't sell it, it doesn't mean nothing.
yeah, then the moves seem to be done a dorky way. Like they'll do all these fantastic high spots, and they'll hit someone with a finishing move, and then the finishing moves, like if it was in a fight, the intent's to knock your opponent out. Um, so they'll hit them with like this brutal finishing move, but then the person kicks out and they beat them with a submission. I think that's stupid because unless they pass out from the submission or something, it's really silly because it's killing the emphasis of like the finishing move, knocking them out, and they do like a
Yeah,
lot of silly finishes like that, and it's
I
really that's one thing.
mean, again, it's all telling a story. Like if you've worked to say the leg to say you do a 10-minute match, if you just do all holds to the leg, you're telling a story. You keep going back to that one thing, and then you do your finishing move, and it's a submission from a leg hold of some sort, and that at least that's telling a story. Where now they just go arm, head, leg, back. They don't work on any particular body part. They don't keep coming back to it. So they're not telling a continuing story. So this is where I think the drift is with today and the old times.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I struggle with. Like, I can't watch a lot of current wrestling, to be honest. Adam Lavelle wrote like an article where he explained how he sort of gotten himself into being able to watch current wrestling from his background where he used to bag it out. He said he's an old school fan, but he's sort of like explaining how you can get into it. So I'm trying to be open minded, but to be honest, a lot of the current wrestling, it's my whinge with music as well. I felt like it was like it's become too like artificial. Where back in the day it had more soul. You know what I mean?
And one thing I don't like today, every match, everyone gets on the microphone and blah blah blah. Um, Again, like there should be your first match, second match, third match, fourth match, and fifth match. Maybe they get on the mic and talk. Not every match, because again, if everyone gets on there and starts yelling and screaming, it just doesn't mean nothing.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
another. Yep.
yeah, they just too much talk, way too much talk, and I like. Is it the New Day in the WE? I can't
New
stand
day.
that. It's absolutely disgusting. You know, I I mean, if I very rarely watch, and I haven't watched WE for probably over nearly 2 years at least. But when I used to watch bits and pieces, I'd always fast forward their crap because it just used to shit me to tears. I think, oh, how pathetic. I mean, they got some good wrestling. Like Kofi's not a bad worker, but just that shit they do just takes everything away from what they can do in the ring.
Yeah, I hate the pancake rubbish. Like, what the hell? Like pancakes, throw pancakes to the crowd.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's just crap. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I
like
hate all
what?
that.
Um, like yeah, with promos, that's another bee in my bonnet I have with current wrestling. I get what you mean too. They get on the mic, but what's the point of getting on the mic? Like Rowdy Piper would probably go on with a lot of bullshit, but you could get into his like character because he was a crazy Scotsman. Or you
Yeah,
had like people like Ric Flair who were great on the mic because they would like adapt interests to like leading up to the feuds and matches, and so there was a purpose where now you get like an MJF. He's not too bad. He does do like some sort of old school fundamental stuff, but I'm sort of getting sick of like the emphasis on just trash talking. I would rather
yeah.
like he's probably one of the better ones, but there's a heap of them that were just trash talk. Where if MJF was sort of like in a wrestling scene that was more old school, I think he'd do really well because he's got the charisma and presence. But then I'm currently sick of like MJF getting on the mic and he has all this potential, but then it's just like trash talk, and it's not like leading to anything unique half the time. But like he
Yeah,
does have some stuff he says that it adds to feuds, and I find interesting. But he's probably got more old school fundamentals than some. But then I sort of lose interest even in him because he's getting too caught up on just trash talking. I
yeah.
better, yeah, I better keep up with this. Josh posted this before. I've worked there a few times. It's a maze. Remember the ramps talking about Brisbane Festival Hall?
I don't remember the ramps, no, but I remember it, yeah, being like a maze. Yeah, yeah.
That he posted some other stuff I'll share. Um, favorite wrestler from USA to work with, I think, because we're talking about Mark Lewin and whatnot.
I haven't worked with anyone from America. I'd love to have been around in the days. I'd love to have been involved, like Bruiser Brody, King Curtis, those sort of guys. I'd love to have been in a match with them, and even like Andre the Giant. Like I've been on tour with Andre here. Um, Unfortunately, they never had a Russian roulette, so I never got the chance to get in the ring with him, which would have been sensational. Like I thought, oh, why couldn't they have a Russian roulette? It would have been just to be in the ring with someone like that. It's just it'll blow your mind, But I'd love to. Of course, with one person I'd love to have wrestled would have been Ric Flair. I'd love to have done a 60-minute match with Ric Flair. That would have been awesome. He's my all-time favourite. I think he's the greatest worker I've seen. He works with anyone. He can make anyone look good. Like he worked with Sid Vicious, Lex Luger, and those guys were just average to me, very average workers. Made them look like $1 million. He can make anyone look sensational. And the matches with him and Steamboat, the three matches would be the best matches. And there's the one match, I think it was a Starcade match, a 2 out of 3 4 1 hour match. Um, I reckon I've watched that match about 30 times, maybe even more. And every student I had, I gave them a copy of that match to watch. And I said, that is the ultimate professional wrestling match. And that's what you should all inspire to be able to do.
Yeah, definitely. Trying to remember because it's been a while. So used to like watch on tapes a lot of the old Jim Crockett promotions, NWA, WCW stuff. And yeah, like a lot of the Steamboat Ric Flair matches, I really enjoyed. There was like one match, I think it might have even been Starcade with Ric Flair Sting when Sting was a horseman and they kicked him out. That was pretty good. And
Right, yeah.
they had the match where Sting shook the hand of Ric Flair at the end. And then there was one of my favourite feuds was when Terry Funk was at commentary and then he comes into the ring and then out the blue attacks Ric Flair and then that leads into a series of matches between him and Ric Flair.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that, yeah. I mean, Funk
I
was
thought,
just sensational.
yeah, it was really well done. The scary part of that feud, I think it was linked to that feud, was when he done the spot with the bag over Ric Flair's head. That was creepy because they sold it so well that you actually believe Ric Flair was suffocating.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
I
again,
remember,
they told stories and it meant something. And again, selling, that's the main thing. Like, that's today, they just don't sell. And so it doesn't have that meaning, that effect. Like some of the things you saw back in those days, like in my time when I was a kid watching wrestling, like they got blinded or, and for weeks they'd be on with eye patches on and, or a neck brace and that sort of stuff, and they'd carry it on for 2 or 3 weeks. Then they'd come back um, and they'd sell that. Just say it was a neck injury. Like, I remember Ron Miller did one once, and he had a neck brace on for 2 or 3 weeks. Then his first few matches back, everyone would go to work on his neck, and he'd sell like crazy. So they told a story, and that's where it all means. That's what wrestling's about, telling a story. It's always the good guy, the bad guy, but if you can tell a really good story, it gets the people, thinking and extend their mind. And if they sell a really good injury, you can work on it and work on it, and you can drag something out for 2 or 3 months, if not longer. Where when you're doing bang, 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 no selling, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, like that spot with Ric Flair, Terry Funk with the bag over Ric Flair's head. I still find like I was petrified of it, and it's more amazing to me than bang, 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 because I think it doesn't take much genius of like doing rep spot moves. Like they've turned it into spot wrestling, and
Yeah,
I think they need to like that was like a training technique if you're learning the moves, but it's like they're just trying to turn everything into one big training show, and they're missing the point where like it's more amazing to me the paper bag thing that got me worried. Like I'm really fearing for Ric Flair's life, and it kept me interested as a fan. Where all the amazing moves, I'd rather forsake the amazing moves for storytelling any day of the week because there's no point doing all those fancy moves if you don't have psychology. I reckon if they're going to do the fancy moves, they need to study old school lucha libre and do it right.
yeah. But like, you get the AEW, they've got so much older guys behind the scene. Like they've got Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and there's a few other older guys working there. Surely they can get them guys to help train the new guys and teach them all this sort of stuff. And whoever's doing the booking, I'm not sure if that Tony Khan does all the booking himself. He shouldn't do because he was never an active wrestler, so he shouldn't do the booking. But they should all sit around and have a booking committee where they all talk about stuff, and they've got the old guys with the experience and the know-how. Sort of get them involved and sit down and talk about it. Then do the storylines.
Yeah, like they've got a smorgasbord of people that Tony Khan brought in that actually have like a good reputation as well. And then there's the arguments that younger people don't want to listen, and there's a lot of egos, and AEW is dysfunctional. Like if you follow dirt sheets, I don't know what's going on backstage really, but you'd think having like Arn Anderson, who was like a long time road agent in WCW and WWF, WWE, and Dean Malenko, for example, with experience there now with AEW, you think that alone, as well as like all the other people they've got helping the company, would actually keep it leveled where they'll be able to utilize their experience and they'll know how to produce and whatnot. And it would actually make it where, you'd see less of the dysfunctional stuff. But I think Tony
Yeah.
Khan does the booking.
The thing is with these guys, like they're saying the young guys don't listen to them. If those guys don't pay their respect and just listen to them, chat to them, take them off TV. Just keep them on the house shows and the first matches until they actually start listening. And they've got to set like the ground rules. If you don't do what I say, you're out. So that's how when Wayne and I started promoting with Bob Lassie in '91, straight away I got rid of 90% of the old guys. I said, right, we're going to push all the young guys that I've been training, plus other young guys from other training schools as well at the time. And I said we might have some bad matches, we might have a few bad shows, but we're pushing young talent because that's the future. And so I'd sit down and work out. I did the main booking, but I'd sit down and work out a 3-month program for each club we had. So then I'd sit down and have a meeting with Wayne, Bob Blassy, and Russ Carew. We'd have a meeting once a month, and I had all my books from all the different clubs we had, and we'd sit down and I discussed every storyline for each wrestler with them all. And then if they all agreed, we sat down and thought that's how it's going to work. If not, we just tweaked things here and there. Then I'll sit down with the young guys and say, look, this is my plan for you for the next 3 months, whatever. And again, nine times out of 10, everything worked out smooth. Occasionally someone didn't want to do nothing. Boom, you're off all the shows. If you don't want to do it our way, you pack your bag and go home. Simple as that. And then they're not getting work, they're not getting paid.
Yeah, they're not. Oh, I missed what you said.
No, I said like, if they didn't like it or they said no, I don't want to do that,
yeah.
I'd say right, you're off the shows. Simple.
Yeah.
Do it our way. I mean, again, it might have been a little bit unfair. There was one guy only happened once, one show, totally refused to do what I asked. So I just said, right, pack your bags and F off. I said, you're off the show. And he just looked at me like shocked. I said, mate, just get out of here. Stop wasting my time. Go and cancel all your future bookings. And I had to change everything on the spot. So then you have to go home that night and change everything for the next 3 months again because you had to change it. And sometimes, like again, people wouldn't turn up. Their car broke down on the way to the show or an injury or whatever, and they'd ring up at the morning of the show and cancel. Because don't forget, back then there was no mobile phones, so you couldn't ring. That was the hard part back in my time, and so you just have to sit there and just change the whole show at the last minute, which is pretty hard work, pretty stressful. But then, again, that's what you're there for. You have to do it.
Yeah, a lot of what you explained is like the basic common sense fundamentals of how people should run wrestling promotions, and that's what I've always scratched my head about. So I've watched like some of the guest booker videos and whatnot just out of interest, which was produced by Kayfabe Commentaries with various like people, and they explain like the foundation of things and whatnot. And like what you said, you'd think like having to like put all that money into producing like a show and setting everything up, like a lot of what you said was you had contingencies and you set up foundation for things and whatnot, and then it makes you wonder if like AEW, WWE, for example, what's going on there, and then it makes you think, well, if someone had a heap of money and they had their foundation right, do you reckon that there'd be an opportunity for someone to just take the market and bankrupt both?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Again, it's harder today because, again, with mobile phones, everything is filmed and everyone's broadcasting everything on the spot. So if you make a mistake, the whole world sees it 10 times over. And if you're doing, just say they do 5 house shows a week, going back into the 70s and 80s, they can do the same card 5 nights in a row. Exactly the same finishes, the same whole lot, because you might be going different areas and no one knows from each state what you're doing. But now with the social media, you can't do that. Everything's got to be different every single time. So again, it is harder for the guys today. I can understand that.
Yeah, I try and do with social media. I think they semi do this. I'll share like stuff from dirt sheets through like Lazarus Pro Wrestling fan group, for example, or different groups, and I'll try and get people interested in different subjects with it. but sometimes that stuff will like have build up for like stuff they could use for storylines, and I'm sort of trying to encourage like positive heat and how they can utilize heat, but I criticize a lot of mainstream wrestling. I'm trying to look for the positives as well, because Adam Lavelle had a good point where he's like, if you get too caught up on hating like everything wrong with wrestling, you may as well not be a fan. But then you got to call it as it is too. I find a lot of current wrestling, there's a lot of stuff they could be doing better, but then I'm trying to be positive with what they're doing right. Like MJF, for example, in a lot of ways, I think he's actually got like good presence, can work a crowd, and I just get annoyed at like the booking foundation with the overall product and how it's set up for him to work. If they actually had like a better foundation for people to work with him and really like tapped into the potential more, I reckon he'd be like a great old school um, Fred Blassie, etc.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, again, it's just different eras, different styles. But as I said, that if they get back to more basics and create storylines, it'll make life a lot easier. Because I mean, I've been to probably about 8 local shows in the last 2 years in Sydney, and we have got some great talent here in Australia. Um, I've seen a few guys from Perth that come over for Sydney shows, some guys from Adelaide and Victoria, and we've got some great talent here. So I'd love to see more promotions work with each other and share talent. That would be great to see. I mean, every time I go to a promotion, I always speak to the promoters and I offer advice. And if they ever want to ask me, I think I'll always try and help them. And I'll give them ideas, give them some suggestions, and um, some just totally ignore what I say. Some listen, some don't. So it's just yeah. But I've got the knowledge up here, and I can share it, and it'd be great to do that. You know.
yeah, definitely. Like a lot of like what you're saying. I'll tell you my background a bit. Like I don't have much experience, but I can say that like as a teenager, I started going to shows. I was like 16, like local shows in Queensland, and I tried to get into training, but I never finished wrestling school, unfortunately. Um, but just through having tried, I know what you mean with like a lot of the fundamental stuff too. And the person training me actually said the basics are the foundation of everything. And so that sits in my mind with like watching wrestling, like the basics of the foundation. So if they've got good basics and they speed it up, if they've got good foundation, they can actually work it a lot better. But I find a lot of like current wrestling, it's like they don't have good basics, and so when they speed it up, it ends up falling apart a lot. But
Yeah.
I've trained under a few companies, um, trying to train as a wrestler, but I actually did get a foot in the door for a short while where I wrote columns for a website. I've done a little bit of that, and I worked for Queensland Championship Wrestling, and actually had a gig where I was doing play-by-play and ring introductions. But I was pretty green. But from that experience, even though I was just like a play-by-play person, like um, you had to try and tap into the pulse, and so like I was sort of like looking for cues just instinctively to try and get the crowd into stuff, like
Yeah.
hype up.
That's where going back again in my day, you'd call the whole match as a comment. Like, again, I did a lot of commentary as well. You'd call the whole match. Where now they don't do that anymore. They do like again they might have live on 5 TV or whatever it is. I did one last year for FWA here in Sydney. I sat on and did the whole show, which I really enjoyed the experience of doing it. But the crowd there aren't getting it, so the house show aren't getting what they're saying. I like the idea of the ring announcer calling the match, calling the time, because when the matches, if they have a bit of a lull, the compare can, as you said, entice the crowd, work the crowd as well. So that's one thing I find off a bit odd today. Like they don't have some shows don't clubs don't even have ring announcers. They just have the guy sitting at the desk and they call out the guys and they just get in the ring and just do their stuff. There's no talking at all. And I find to me that does help with the crowds as well.
One card trick we used to use um, that I really like, and I reckon it's something, just the little things. Um, I'd have the heel come out first and the face come out second. And I basically would sort of hype up when I'm calling out the heel a little bit, and then when the baby face comes out, I'd turn it up an extra notch, and that
Yeah,
would work a lot of the time. Because even if the talent didn't know how to work the crowd, some of them would cotton onto it, and then you let them take the ball, but you give them the avenue to work with. But just through that setup, you have the heel come out and the baby face you hype up a little better. It gives talent a chance to work the crowd as well. So just the little things with what you can do with ring introductions, with heel coming out and face, and then just like little booking things you can do where people have something to work with, like wrestling talent, whatnot, and
yeah.
also people actually being heels and faces, not the whole stupidity of I'm meant to be a heel, but then I'm trying to be a face factor. That seems to happen a lot, and there's people that don't really know how to play the role as well as they should.
Well, that's again all part of training. You've got to teach people how to do that, and you got to have a set role. Like someone's either a pure face, or again you can have people like um, in the middle, and it's just all psychology. Like I used to work mainly as a heel, but when our promotion at different times, say someone got injured and they're out for a few months, and you needed someone to work as a face, I could just do a turn. But the way you do the turn is unexpected. You obviously get the shit kicked out of you, juice like crazy, and boom, instantly you've gone from the heel to a face. And then I'd do the face for 6 months or whatever it was, and until the storylines can get back to normal, then I'd fade back out because I started fading myself out in 93, 94. And I promoted till the end of 98, but I'd had to come back here and there just to cover things up, even though I didn't want to work as much because I had so many injuries with my body. But again, people getting injured or not showing up, you just have to change the whole show. So that's where having a good foundation, a good card helps, and having again all the knowledge, all the background.
Yeah, I find another thing that annoys me is you probably noticed yourself. I don't know much about the levels of professionalism, but like one thing I've noticed with like current era stuff is people don't prioritize professionalism and respect over ego. And so, like, I think a lot of times too, people are meant to play like a heel, and the affirmation is the crowd hates you. That's your affirmation. You're doing a good job. But then you get some people at a heel, and they have like an agenda where they want to be liked so they can make more money out of merchandise or something. But then it
Yeah,
ends up crapping on like the whole locker room, and it ends up crapping on people and their roles. And so it's like a slap in the face to wrestling. So I reckon more people need to think long term, locker room respect etiquette, and they need to respect each other. And even though I get the whole dog eat dog competition stuff, I think a lot of the current scene have lost the long term. Where you think long term. Well, if you look after each other in the locker room and you actually stick to your role, it makes you look good and it makes everyone look good. And
Yeah,
regarding like the dog eat dog stuff, well, you can pick and choose your battles, but I think it's killing the business where people are thinking of themselves too much to the point where it's just killing the business now. Where back in Hulk Hogan's time, there was probably a purpose where you hear the talk of him being an egomaniac and all that. But the fact is, he was the draw at the time. So he was probably in a position where he was trying to keep the merchandise coming in, and he was like the big draw. But and there's like people in the locker room that knew their role. Like Rowdy Piper was a pretty good heel most of the time. Like he became a face, but like if you look at Rowdy Piper as a great example, he knew his role and how to work it. And there's a lot of
yeah,
people nowadays that don't stick to their character. If people start to like you, maybe go to the crowd and become a face. But I think there's like too much ego dictating things. But then it's killing the business because people end up thinking, oh, wrestling's gone to shit. I'm not watching this anymore. I can see through to people. No one has respect for the industry they're working in, and there's no passion anymore, and there's no respect for like each other in the locker room, and then people work lemon matches because they're all about themselves and they're not actually trying to put on a good match or work the crowd. And I think that's become like a real bad thing nowadays with fight wrestling. I don't know whether you'd agree or not.
yeah. I mean, well, there's a question there from Josh again about
Oh yeah,
can they do a super show? It's the same thing to what you're just saying. If the promoters can all get together, cut all the bullshit, cut all the egos, put on a show, yes, it could work. You could have 3 nights in a row: Wednesday night Brisbane, Thursday night Sydney, Friday night Melbourne. You could easily do that if it was promoted right. You had two or three promotions get together, put on the show. They could easily do it. There was a couple of guys, well, there was probably three guys that I didn't like, obviously in the dressing room, and it's pretty clear in my book. But even if I didn't like them personally, I respected them as wrestlers. So when I was on the show, if I was wrestling one of them guys, it'd just be like, again, we're mates. We sit down, we talked about the match, we tried to make each other look good. It was professional, 100% professional. As soon as the bell rings at the end, I hate them again. It's just different people. Like, but again, it's professional. Once you're in that ring, you're doing a job. You're paid to do a job, so you do your job. So you learn to respect them for that reason. So I'm not sure how that works today because I don't go backstage. I just sit around and talk to some of the local wrestlers at the front of the show. I don't go back, so I don't know what it's like today, but that's how it was back then. Like we all got on pretty well. Again, there's always going to be someone you don't like, but you have to be professional.
yeah, definitely. I think that's what I was getting at as well with because I understand fair game and dog eat dog, and sometimes that's the position you're in. You got to do what you need to do to survive, and politics and whatnot. But I think there's too much of an emphasis on people having the mentality, I'm looking out for myself now and survive. But then they don't think like long term, and I think that's what's killing professional wrestling. And I think um, like that's what I've noticed just as a fan watching wrestling. Where back in the day, wrestling had it together more with. I think the attitude was we all had our role. We're going to be professional. And even though Hulk Hogan has copped a lot of people talking bad about him in the media, if you look at the actual setup of it, Rowdy Piper stuck to his role really well, where he was like the heel. Hulk Hogan was the big draw baby face, and there seemed to be a good structure of how the shows were produced. where now it's like there's always people being released or rehired or fired, and then it's like you get behind someone, but then they end up like taking time off, like Kenny Omega, for example. I started getting into him with the Don Callis angle, and then he had issues with health, but there started to be really good build up, and then
Him
you
and
lose
Will
interest.
Ospreay are two great workers. If
Oh,
you can look at
definitely.
them, yeah, sensational workers. So again, you just got to look after your body and do the right thing by yourself. And they're both way ahead of a lot of the other guys. And they're not in any major promotion. They sort of still freelance around. They go to Japan. They can still work in America. They can still work wherever they want. So they got the smarts. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, because yeah, Will Ospreay is a really good talent. He's wrestled here in Australia too, I believe. I think I actually watched one of the shows on live on a streaming platform where he wrestled like New Zealand, Southern Pro Wrestling, and Melbourne City Wrestling, and he put on some great matches here. And I think he might have wrestled PWA in
Yeah, I think he
Sydney.
worked with Robbie Eagles. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they had some great. Yeah, I think he did too. They had a really good match, and that was before Robbie Eagles went to New Japan. And there was like a symbolism thing at the end of the match where I think he offers Robbie Eagles a Japanese like flag token or something, and that was
right.
like an invite to New Japan, and then it led to him going to New Japan. Um, from memory, it's been a while since I watched it, but yeah, it was a pretty good match. Like that's a match if you watch it that I think emphasizes what I'm talking about. If you're going to do spot wrestling, they actually had the psychology attached to it, and
Yeah.
they
Well,
got people into it.
Robbie's a great worker and a really nice person, and he respects the wrestling business. He wants to know the history of the wrestling business, and he knows a lot of the older stuff. And I've sat down and chat with him a couple of times, and he wants to know about what happened in my time and even before me. And that's why I think he does the Ron Miller figure four leg lock as his finisher. It's just out of respect, and that's really nice to see that he takes the time to acknowledge the history. And quite a few of the guys I've met want to sit down and talk about the old days, and they want to learn from that as well, which is great.
Definitely. I've kept Josh Mars's question up. If anyone feels wants to comment some stuff, feel free. I just have kept it up because I think there's a lot of food for thought in it, and I might reference back and forth. But like, if
I've
anyone
said to a
wants to,
few from I've said to a few promoters here in Sydney that if they can work together, they can, as you said, like share talent from get someone from Perth, get someone from Melbourne, get someone from Adelaide, and put on a really big show. It could work, and there are two promotions getting together actually, and they're going to do some shows in April. But I can't say anything now because I'm not sure if they want anyone to know yet. So, but that's two promotions in Sydney are actually going to put their heads together and work together. So that's great. And I've actually sat in on one of their little conversations with them and give them some ideas as well. So I really hope it works for them, and then they can continue doing that.
oh, definitely. Like another example I'm going to mention. Like I've got a mate who I've introduced to the Australian wrestling scene. He's a wrestling fan, but I took him to a show, AWF show in Caboolture a few years back when they come to Queensland, and we're looking at possibly going to some UPW shows or whatnot. But I've tried to tell him a bit of the backdrop of what I know with keeping up with the scene, and I've actually said to him, a lot of people probably don't know unless they're in going to the local shows or whatnot about the back history of a lot of the stuff because there's been an issue of a lack of marketing at times. But one thing I mentioned to him was AWF done a tour thing that had like a lot of big names called Psycho Slam,
Right.
and a lot of people probably in the current era don't even remember it, but they had like names like Chris Candido, Sabu, um, Psychosis, and there's like a lot of names that have wrestled AWF like Al Snow, Tommy Dreamer. Um, AWF are probably doing all right with like the supernovas in their market. But like just promoting like Aussie wrestling to people who don't know about Aussie wrestling, I feel like I do word of mouth. Word of mouth is probably the best, but I feel like there's a lot of potential where it could be tapped into, where there could be more know-how, like know about like the local scene, if you know what I mean. Like you find out, you know, you get into it, you know about it, but there's times where I feel Australian wrestling has lost potential because they haven't advertised properly.
Yeah. Again, it's probably cheaper today to advertise because again, it's through social media. Most of it's free. Um, if they got on like TikTok and all those things to advertise their shows, again, I've never been on TikTok, but I've heard so much about it. But I mean, like, you got the potential to do that. Like in my time, you had to either we used to always go to the local newspapers because again, people don't probably have local newspapers anymore. A lot of their areas, or even the bigger daily newspapers, and it was quite expensive to advertise back then. Where nowadays, I said they can do things just on social media, and they probably get heaps more coverage than they would from your local papers, type of thing.
Oh, definitely. Like AWF, I think did draw a lot of money of those events back in the day, like Psycho Slam, whatnot. Um, but the point I was making, like a lot of people, like you may get like people like me that have followed it for a while, but there's a lot of even like people who follow current Australian wrestling that have no idea of like heritage stuff, and I think it's good to get out like the history more of like we actually have done big things in Australia, and there have been like big names that have come over here, like in your book you're talking about Andre the Giant coming to Australia, etc. But then a lot of people are unaware of like how like big we've had a lot of like really big sort of shows and stuff. But I think promoting more of the heritage, like there's a lot of people that don't know that, like they don't know about the heritage of Australian wrestling
Yeah.
and
Well,
like the
again,
history.
back in the day, unfortunately, when World Championship Wrestling was on, the only bad thing was a lot of the Australians were just used as jobbers for the Yanks. Um, Jim Barnett at the time said no one's going to pay to see an Australian wrestler, and it was only at the time like Larry O'Day and Ron Miller. They were the two who got the big push, and it's only when as an O'Day and Miller took over that they started pushing like your George Barnes, Kevin Martin, Johnny Doyle, those sort of guys who got their push in the last say 3 years of TV. So it's a shame that they didn't push the Australians more. Like, again, they occasionally did. Like there was a time there was a guy called Rocky Romero from Melbourne, and they gave him a massive push as Rocky KO. Like he did a bit of boxing or whatever, and he
Like,
used to knock him out in one punch. So they did that for about probably 4 or 5 months, but then he just disappeared, and he was just back to being normal worker after that. So the Australian guys have never had that, didn't get that chance at the time to get that big push type of thing.
what do you think of like a lot of Australian talent now going to AEW, WWE, getting opportunities in the American market?
Oh, sensational. I love seeing the Australian guys over there. Just if they can stick to basics and just don't believe all the bullshit, just keep to themselves and be honest to themselves. Don't go down the WE path, all the steroids and the drugs, and um, follow all that crazy stuff. Just stick to yourself. Like I'm sort of glad I didn't go over. Again, it says in the book we had a discussion in '88, or I think it was '86 or '88, to go to Stampede, and if I'd gone, I probably never have come back. But I believe now, like, did you watch the Tales from Territory series at all?
Um, I think like I've watched heaps of shows similar, but I think yeah, I might have.
If you watch
I,
that, you sit there and listen to what they say. The talent was treated like shit. Absolutely, the old guys gave the young guys absolute hell. Um, there was one, I can't remember who it was now, but one of the young guys was walking through, and one of the older guys just went up and kicked him from behind onto the ground, and everyone just laughed at him and that sort of stuff. And again, with all the drugs and alcohol and painkillers, and I just thought I was disgusted with a lot of the stuff I heard, and I thought, well, if I'd gone over there, that was the time I would have been there. Um, yeah, I just thought, wow, I wouldn't have survived. I'd either be dead, um, or just I would have come home. I don't know. It's just from the stories you heard about these people, and yeah, some of the things really disgusted me of the behaviour of the wrestlers in the dressing rooms. Like, yeah, it's pretty bad stuff. So you should really listen to the whole series. Um, it was it was out of just unexpected. And I mean, I really loved it, but I was just disgusted by some of the things. And the other guys would just sit around and laugh, thought it was funny, and I thought it's disgusting. You couldn't do that. A lot of that stuff you couldn't do these days because work and health, safety, and all that sort of stuff would you just couldn't do that. But that's how it was back then. Even when I started training, if I did something wrong, I'd get a kick up the arse or a smack around the back of the head, get screamed at and said, do it again, do it again. You can't do that now. It's just so different.
yeah, I got told off once. Um, I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of people do this though. It's just not masculine where people want to admit it. But I was like training and I flinched at getting a chop to the chest, and the fella goes to me, "Oh, come on, Laz, take it. We're wrestlers." And so like the mentality was just learn to take a chop to the chest. We're pro wrestlers, but like a chop to the chest is something you get conditioned for. But a lot of people won't admit that it's still something that makes you flinch. I think a lot of people flinch to a chop to the chest.
So one of the hardest chops I've ever had was from Lofty Pigford. He was crazy. We actually we tried to copy the Steamboat Flair match. We did a 45-minute match, and we tried to base it on their match, and we just chopped the shit out of each other, and it actually split my chest open from how hard he was chopping me. And when I had the shower afterwards, it because you're sweating in it as well. It's just the salt from the sweat. It stung like crazy, and I had welt marks and cut marks for about 2 or 3 weeks after that match. It was just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it can get quite brutal. Like you get conditioned for it. Like I've been practicing chopping my own chest for years. Um, just like for when I was like doing the training, conditioning, whatnot. But yeah, like it's an interesting thing because like some of the chops you see, like photos of, are like you're saying, where they're like really brutal and there's like real bad bruising and um. But then it's sort of something, especially back in the day, where if you flinch, people frown down upon it. But I think most people would agree that they're not too eager to take chops to the chest at times because it's like getting hit by a whip.
Yeah, as long as you're warmed up, it's not too bad. If you do it cold right from the beginning of the match, it stings twice as hard. But if you once you're warmed up, again your adrenaline's pumping. Um, you don't notice it as bad. It's the same with injuries. Like I've done a few matches where I come off the top rope and I've landed on my ankle and you've blown your ankle up type of thing. And because you got the adrenaline going, you can keep going. As soon as you stop, you go and take your boot off and your ankle just swells up like crazy. Then you're on crutches for 2 weeks. So, but in the ring, you don't even notice it. You keep going. That's just the way it is. I've had acid concussion in the ring. You just keep going. It's just a thing that's pumped into you, and you just get around it. Afterwards, you suffer, but at the time, you just put it, any little injury aside, like dislocated fingers or whatever, and yeah, you just keep going.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think in training when you're preparing, because you've got the anticipation in your head, it's probably worse. But when you're in the ring, I would imagine not actually having performed in front of people, so I have no experience there. But I'd imagine just from an outsider looking in, like you're saying, adrenaline, whatnot, you get like fired up in the moment, and you don't like think of like anticipation as much, and it's all muscle memory. Where I think like when you're training, sometimes with the way it gets, like some of the people like to rip people, I think, where they'll sort of like emphasize you're going to get chopped. And so you
Yeah,
think about it and it's like, oh, and then they chop you. It's because there's all this build up like a blood test. Cause I'm not a big fan of blood tests where you're waiting for them to get the blood test over with. And that's probably the worst part. But like when you
yeah,
actually got copped a chop to the chest, it's probably not as bad and at times depending who does it. Um, But yeah, what you're saying is pretty fair too, with like the muscle memory. When you're in the ring, you got all that adrenaline, and you're getting into the crowd. Um, yeah, I only like sort of experience with training stuff, and so when you're training, I think people like to rib you too, where they'll try and emphasize it a bit more than they need to, and then you're like freaking out. Oh, I've got to take a chop to the chest.
yeah. Again, it's
Um,
all you just got to go with the flow, go with the whole. Well, we did a tag match one night at Miracle RSL. The the match before the main event, the ring post broke,
oh yeah,
so and the ring was like caved in like that. And we were doing the main event at tag was I think it was me and Wayne with Barnes and Medlin, I think, and Larry O'Day was promoting it then, and so we thought, oh, well, I'll call it off. And he said, no, go there and do your full 30-minute tag. I thought, well, hang on, we can't use the ropes. We can't use one side of the ring. And so we had to do a 30-minute tag pretty much in the centre of the ring only. And we couldn't even stand on opposite corners because that side of the ring had collapsed. So we had one guy there and one guy here. So again, you just adapt, you're professional, get on with it. And that's how you have to do it.
yeah, definitely. I think yeah, like with myself, for example, with like ring introductions, play by play, I wasn't really taught much. I was just thrown out there in a lot of ways and given a little bit to work with. Um, and I was pretty green. I'd stuff a lot up, but there was a lot of instinctual stuff where I just had to adapt from my own experience. Like trying to think of a good example. I won't go into it. There was this silly concept on the first show I done play by play with. It was called Joker's Wild, and you had to pick stipulations with like the cards. There was like a deck of cards with different stipulations, but I was getting confused by it, and so I
Right.
kept stuffing it up. And then halfway through the show, I made a joke about, oh, everyone give it up for everyone's favourite dyslexic commentator, Lazar, and everyone cracked up laughing. Um, but then the wrestler and promoter, his wrestling name's Jimmy Sparks. He actually had background in New Zealand. Um, what he done to sort of like look, I think he knew it wasn't working too well, but he was fairly smart. He got the deck of cards on his way to the ring. He just throws them all in the air,
Right.
and he heads to the ring, and it's sort of like taking the piss out of the concept a bit. But it was the way he set it up. It was just too mathematical. Like I think people try and be too mathematical, trying to be creative, but yeah, it
But the
just
thing
was like
is,
confusing.
if you were confused as the compare, how are the crowd? So they'd be confused even more.
Yeah, exactly.
So it wouldn't work. You've got to listen to the people. The people are the ones paying your wages. You've got to listen to what the people want, people say. If things aren't working, you've just got to change it so quick. And that's where, again, the promoter to me has to be someone with experience in the business. Um, and they can adapt and just change the whole. You have to, if sometimes you have to change the whole card, boom, change it.
Yeah, that's what Jimmy Sparks did basically. Like the concept he come up with, I think, because you've had companies like TNA with very interesting concepts and whatnot, where they've tried to be different, but then sometimes they get too confusing as well. People have tried to follow that, where they've tried to be unique, but then sometimes they need to look at what works a bit more regarding basics. Or if you're going to be really creative, look at the components. But what he did was the system wasn't working that well, so he just throws the cards in the air, gets a bit of heat, and then it ends up getting over because the crowd were probably laughing about it because it was getting too confusing anyway. And then he ends up getting in the ring and has his match. The funniest thing I remember saying on the show, they were like, it was a bit immature of me, I was a bit green, but the match kept like going on, and I just felt like they were dragging on, like it wasn't interesting anymore. And I made a comment about if you hit him with a car, he will still kick out.
Right.
Yeah. That was a match between Ricky Rembrandt and I can't think of his name. Rabies the Clown. It wasn't too bad of a match. It was just dragging on because they were doing like a lot of top rope, like weapons, all that. But I just felt like the style of match it was. You can only do so much brawling and pace it out.
Yeah.
And
See, I
I
had
was,
again, when I was doing the commentary, like with the referee, I had a good relationship with the referee as well. I had certain words I'd use in the commentary. If I said those words, he'd tell the boys straight away, go home, finish. So it might have been planned for a 25-minute match, but if the match was sucking after 10 or 15 minutes, I'd say my little word just in my commentary, and the referee would look at me, and I'd just sort of give a little slight little nod, and he'd say to the boys, quick, go home. So again, that's where you have to have the experienced guys too. Like the referee's got to be an experienced guy as well who knows the business. So he'd listen to what I was saying because I was the booker, and so yeah, so you can adapt and change things pretty quick. So if something was just dragging out, and not working, just finish it, get rid of it, and set the next one
yeah,
up as quick as you can.
yeah, I think the match wasn't too bad of a match. I really enjoyed it. If Ricky Rembrandt and Rabies are watching, hopefully they don't take offence to me, but um, I just found that it was dragging on. Like it was really good, but in some matches they kill the heat by just going too long. So I was sort of thinking, I wish I'd just finished because it got to the point where I lost interest.
Yeah,
And then I sort of emphasised that during the play-by-play when I made the comment about, oh, if you hit him with a car, he'll still kick out.
yeah.
But then thinking back on it, I was pretty green. I shouldn't have probably said that.
Yeah, well, if I was the promoter and you said that, I'd probably take you off the show.
Yeah, I'd probably be buried.
Yeah,
There was an incident where I was doing an article for their website, and called the Lazar Report, and one of the articles I'm trying to draw interest and heat. I think there was a little bit of like, I don't know what was going on, but like I think there was a little bit of like gossip going on about it because I was trying to draw heat where I'm trying to like um Jimmy Sparks is like the wrestler and promoter, and I'm trying to get interest in him being a heel, but being like a rookie and green, I was there was probably like you could say a bit of ego, but I probably went a bit too harshly. Um, but we done a spot at the show where he had like a Jimmy Sparks Open challenge, and so I was set up to basically he calls me out to the ring, and I'm set up to sell like I'm really scared, and
Mm-hmm.
it ended up working out really well because people actually thought I was scared, and I really sold it because I had no issue of doing that because the article meant well, but I think in it I was trying to do like a what was his name when he was doing the article? Um, Vince Russo when he was doing his character. Can't think of his name. He had like a persona where he'd do articles and he'd like try and get heat and interest to like the shows and matches. I kind of did that, but then it set up well where it led into like someone coming out and saying he's not a wrestler, he's a commentator, and then they ended up sort of Jimmy Sparks ends up backing out the match, and the debuting Sweetass comes in and he has a match with Kamikaze Kid. But
Yeah.
it sort of was good because something that could have been worse where I wrote that article and people may have been taking offense because I was trying to really like get a reaction and I was bagging out Jimmy Sparks. So I was trying to do it for a form of heat to get interest in the shows.
Yeah.
Um, the way he sort of set up where he calls me out to the ring and I sold it like I'm really scared. I think that emphasised things where it ended up becoming really good. And after we done that, a lot of like people high fived me, whatnot, saying I did a good job. But I showed there that I wasn't about ego. I was because my intention was, even though I was really green, was to try and get people interested. And so
Yeah.
when he gave me that opportunity, I made sure to sell it where I was like emphasising I'm really scared and I'm worried I'm going to get beaten up, sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, it's good.
And yeah, I
It's
think
all
like,
experience and just learning from it all. Yeah.
and I think that's a great example of you got to be careful with getting heat, but then you got to not be afraid because sometimes that's what it's about. You want to use it to draw interest, but you also want to be respectful. And you can be green and you can do like I remember reading in your book. There was an incident on one of the shows in Britain, England, where you were talking about the Queen trying to get heat. So it was a similar thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then people get like funny about it. But then I think it worked out well where Jimmy Sparks sort of gave me the opportunity to call me out to the ring, and I sold like I'm shit scared because he basically
Yeah.
emphasised, oh, there's a certain person that's been talking shit about me in articles on the website. He's over there, Lazar. Come to the ring. I would have bone to pick with you, like he called me to the ring. But it annoyed me because, like, when I'm selling that I'm scared, he bloody broke kayfabe and goes, "It's all right, Lazar," and I'm thinking, don't do that, Jimmy. But I kept selling that I'm scared. But then I think when the Kamikaze Kid come out, ended up working out where we got back into it. But yeah, like I was trying to oversell it. I'm scared because I really wanted to draw interest to Jimmy Sparks as a heel, and I wanted to sort of showcase that the column I did wasn't me trying to be up myself. I was trying to use it to get people talking. So I wrote some stuff about how like I'm disgusted of Jimmy Sparks and the promotion, and I'm sick of like his politics and whatnot. And then he calls me to the
Mm.
ring and threatens to bash me, but it ended up
Yeah.
working out really well, I reckon.
Oh, it's good. Well, mate, I've got
But
to get going. It's
yeah,
gone on a bit longer than I thought, actually. So, if you don't mind, maybe
yeah,
we can
no
do it
worries.
again. Maybe we can do it again one day.
Yeah, no worries. I'm hoping to set up a good couple of LLJ as like a thing where it's fairly formal. So like I'm looking at having like fellow fans on the show and people like yourself who have been involved in wrestling, and the idea of it is to just basically like a cup of tea, have a chat, and go into our different points of view and just talk wrestling, talk passion, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping to encourage that regarding getting people interested in the passion of pro wrestling, and then draw interest in wrestling history, like the local scene, the current product, and so I'm hoping to like really build a platform where I can utilize that. It's been a
Yep.
pleasure anyway having you on the show, and thanks for your
Loved it.
time.
And the book, Dazzler Dunlop Inside My Squared Circle, available through Shawline Publishing Group, if you don't mind. Thank you.
No, no
Have to,
worries.
have to get that little plug in.
Yeah, make sure to share the links too. I'll probably put them down the bottom. Did you see the intro I did for
Yeah, yeah, I
popping
did.
up?
Yeah,
What did you think of it?
that was good. Yeah,
Yeah, I felt like it actually turned out all right. I was like mucking around, and I'm like, oh, that ended up looking good. Yeah, make sure to buy Dazzler Dunlop's book. I've been reading it myself. If you found the show really interesting today, read his book. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in it that is just as interesting, if not more interesting, than our conversation today. I've been getting really fascinated by like his knowledge of like the history with World Championship Wrestling to like post World Championship Wrestling with like the different history of like the names we've had over here and the shows we've had with names like Andre the Giant. And I highly recommend reading his book. There's a lot of really interesting stuff, and also just like a person's journey as well, where it's interesting regarding like just a person's journey, like um, outside of pro wrestling. You'll probably find it really inspiring just reading his journey. It's been a pleasure, Dazzler. We'll talk again.
yep. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you
Okay.
for your time.
No, no worries at all. Take care, Laz.
You too. Happy New Year.
Yep, same to you. And as we can do this again in the new year.
Sounds good.
Okay. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, that was my interview with I'll call it a conversation with Dazzler Dunlop. Um, Hoping to do more of these. If any like fellow fans or wrestling personalities are keen to pop on, we'd love to chat with you on Good Couple of LLJ. Hoping to use this platform to just talk to people about their passion for pro wrestling, knowledge of the business, whatnot. The idea of it is it's like a cup of tea, cup of coffee, see where the conversation leads, basically. Um, could even lead into subjects outside of pro wrestling, whatnot. Um, yeah, just be yourself. And yeah, see where the conversation goes. I really appreciated Dazzler Dunlop on the show today. It was a great conversation. I may have rambled on a bit, but I think we all do that from time to time. But yeah, I encourage people to, if you're interested in coming on and chatting pro wrestling and other stuff and just having a conversation on Good Cuppa with LLJ, I really encourage people to come onto the show. I've kept up what Josh Mars commented. Will we ever see another Australian wrestling super show with wrestlers from all over Australia in one event? Um, and like I think there's some real good food for thought there, because as we were saying with Dazzler Dunlop, we're talking about ego and people getting along. And back in the territory days before um, Vince McMahon Jr. and all the bloody gossip about that. Apparently, a lot of promoters in America work together well, and they would exchange talent. It still goes on an indie level, and I think we've started to see it with like AEW and New Japan and Impact and even WWE have used like other talent that are not signed to them. Like Mickie James made a appearance at Royal Rumble when she's an Impact talent, and was Impact Women's Knockouts champion at the time. But yeah, some food for thought. Could we ever see another Australian Wrestling Super Show, wrestlers from all over Australia in one event? We've got Oceania Pro Wrestling, which is like a new company that's starting to, that's going to be like doing shows, I think, in the new year or 2024. And we've got like World Series Wrestling that I've been sharing some stuff of theirs on like Lazarus Pro Wrestling fan group. They've been doing like really well. I actually ordered one of their events on Fight, and they had like a fight chat where I was like chatting in the chat while watching the like 2-day shows, and that was pretty good. Chatting to fellow fans. But yeah, I'm going to exit soon. I'm just seeing if anyone comments. Because I really like, could we ever see another Australian Wrestling Super Show, wrestlers from all over Australia in one event that Josh Mars posted? Also, with good Cuppa of LLJ, the plan is to just like be honest and say your thoughts. And there's a few things I probably said that I'm thinking, oh, people might take offense to it. I might get heat over it, but that's the idea. Just be yourself and, speak about your passion for pro wrestling, and don't worry about, like people getting annoyed and all that. Like, it's all about freedom of speech and like talking to people who are involved in pro wrestling or who are fans of pro wrestling about the passion for pro wrestling and encouraging the passion for pro wrestling. I'll see if anyone else comments, and then I'm going to exit. And I'm hoping to do some more interactive chats as well, where we'll do some live interactive chats. I done one the other day. I have like a poll on Laz's Pro Wrestling fan group for like what times we could do it. And I also posted something with what days, so if people have suggestions. My mate David Bamber mentioned he reckoned Wednesday and Sundays would be good for me to do like good couple of LLJ interactive chats. So an interactive chat will just be me filming, and I just talk with people who post stuff through like an interactive chat, and then there'll be like sessions like today where, not sessions, sound like I'm on the piss. There'll be like trying to think of the wording. There'll also be like stuff like today where I catch up with people like Dazzler Dunlop, and get into some really good conversation with him. He's got a really good book too. I've been reading the ebook version. Yeah, I really recommend people check it out. I'll keep this going for a bit more, see if anyone wants to comment, and then I'll leave it at that. It'd be interesting to get like comments going on, could we ever see another Australian Wrestling Super Show of wrestlers from all over Australia in one event? So I'd love people commenting on that, because then we could get like some conversation going with people's different points of view and thoughts on that. And then it sort of gets an interesting conversation going. But I'll give it a bit more, and then I'll go home, so to speak. Ha ha ha. Hope people enjoyed the chat today. I want to thank Dazzler Dunlop. I really appreciate his time, and it was a really great conversation. And yeah, I'm really thankful for the conversation. I really liked a lot of the stuff we discussed. like great passion. He has like a lot of great insight. So it's really good talking to him about pro wrestling. I really like appreciate his insight. And, I enjoyed the conversation. Like there's a lot of stuff where he really has a passion for pro wrestling like me. So I really enjoy talking to people with a passion for pro wrestling. All right. Noticing not many people are. I'm suffering from a day where I'm brain farting a lot, so just excuse that. Um, I have my good days and bad days. Um, yeah, I'll get off soon. If anyone wants to comment, I'll give you a little bit more, and then I'll go home because it might be time to finish the match, so to speak, and go home. Haha. Just trying to draw interest to the subject that Josh Mars said about could we ever see another Australian wrestling super show wrestlers from all over Australia in one event. So I thought there might be some meat on the bone of that one to get some interesting like thoughts on it from people and their different points of view, etc. All right, I'll do a countdown. I don't know whether we'll get like much more out of this, so I'll probably go home, and then that'll be a wrap, I think. Well, I'm gonna go home. Appreciate people's support. Appreciate Dazzler Dunlop. Really encourage his book. Like I was talking about a lot of stuff just from reading his book that really inspired me. He has some real great stuff in it. Just from the history of like his experience in Australian wrestling and having toured like the UK scene, and having promoted in the scene and having like learned a lot from world class wrestling where it had like potential but fell short. Um, I don't want to give away too much though. I encourage people to read the book. Um, it's a really good book. There's like so much to it. Because I could be talking about what I've read in the book, but you need to read it yourself to appreciate it. So it's like me talking about a movie and giving away everything in the movie. But buy the bloody book and give the book a read. Dazzler Dunlop. You can get it on Amazon, um, or from the publishing company's website. I keep forgetting the name of the publishing company. Sean something. I'll share the links on here anyway. I'll do another countdown because I've rambled on so much. I'm sort of like stretching it out a bit to see if anyone comments, but I think it's time to finish the match and go home. All right, that's a wrap. Buy the book Dazzler Dunlop. Google search it. We'll share the links on Lazar's Pro Wrestling fan group as well. But yeah, Also Google search it. There's heaps of like Google searches that will show up. The name of it's Dazzler Dunlop. Depending on where you're located, your local bookstore should have a copy as well. You can get it in ebook format as well through Kindle, which is an Amazon app. So that's food for thought. If you look it up through Amazon, you got Dazzler Dunlop. I'm reading the Kindle version, so yeah, I'm getting right into it. But I'm going to do another countdown now, and that'll be a wrap. Truth be told, I just like playing with like the special like bits and pieces on StreamYard. So me doing all the countdowns was me fiddling with stuff just because it's fun. All right, I'll let you go. It's been a pleasure. We'll do one more countdown, and then that will definitely be a wrap. I'm going home. Haha. Well, that's a wrap. Appreciate people watching the show. Appreciate talking to Dazzler Dunlop. Thank you for your support and your comments. Hope to do more of these, so keep supporting us. Learning on the job, so hopefully I'm less green. Ha ha ha. But yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation today with Dazzler Dunlop. Make sure to buy his book, Dazzler Dunlop. I'm going home. Been a pleasure. Appreciate it. We'll do one more countdown, and then I'll finally stop working as all, and I'll get off of this bloody thing. Been a pleasure. Until next time on Good Cup of LLJ. Thank you for your support. Look forward to doing more. See you soon. Bye.